Welcome to the brand new revived Bell Auditorium. I do know we will have commissioners in and out throughout the day, but just in the interest of time, I wanted us to go ahead and get started. So Mayor Johnson, if you would, come and welcome us. You should have a binder in front of you, or at least a slide deck of today's meeting, which would have your agenda outlined. Mayor Johnson.
Staff, it is great to be before you this morning. Our most important work, discussion budget for 2025 as we perform the Augusta, Richmond County home, creating jobs, providing services, and I would only ask that, as we continue these conversations and we devise a budget for 2025, that like last year, we to be prudent. I look forward to participating with you today as well. So if you don't see them here now, just rest to know that this is important to them as well, and they will be here today. Thank you so much, Administrator.
And there are those who lead. Leaders hold a position of power or influence. Those who lead inspire us. Today's budget retreat has a theme: start with why. Each of you should have a card on your table or in front of you. If you would please take one of those cards, and I want you to write down the top 3 reasons why you do what you do, why you lead, why you choose to inspire. Whether individuals or organizations, we follow those who lead, not because we have to, but because we want to. We follow those who lead, not for them, but for ourselves. So take a few moments, because each of you in this room today, you are a leader. Some by choice, some by right, by position, by authority, whatever the case may be. At home or at work, you are a leader. So this is your icebreaker for this morning. We're going to take about a good 60 seconds or so to write down the top 3 reasons why you do what you do. Okay, now that you have your top 3 reasons why, always keep those in mind throughout the day. I won't ask you to share them, but if you choose to, once we have some breakout sessions at your table, please feel free to do so. You should also have a book in front of you that is specifically designed for those who inspire others and for those who want to make certain that you are also inspired. It is a great read. So think about it, because start with why is how great leaders inspire everyone around you to take action. I am Takia Dowse, your interim administrator, as you well know, and I would like to welcome you to our FY 2025 budget retreat. While I've already told you you have your agendas in your book, here's just a brief run-through of our day. We've already had our welcome, and then now we're about to go through our accomplishments. Every year, or at least for the last 3 years, we've done a community engagement event. Augusta on display was on June 1st, and it was at May Park Community Center. We had about 250 participants. Thank you for that, Ms. Hayes. About 250 participants. That did not include all of our city departments as well as our agencies that were able to come through. We had food trucks, we had events for the kids. But during this time and for the last several weeks, we've had a budget survey for citizens to take part in, to tell us where they would like for Augusta to spend their $1 billion budget. As you can see, which is no surprise, of those who participated in the survey, we have about 159 people who responded to the survey, and the bulk of those dollars, they wanted those dollars to go towards public safety. Everyone wants to make certain that we live in a clean and safe environment. Next, which fell after public safety, was quality of life. That includes your parks, your recreation. People want something to do, and they want to make sure that that is done in a safe regard. Augusta has been extremely busy, but as you can see, the facility that you're in today is our, the Bell Auditorium. Next upcoming is our James Brown Arena. We most recently completed a $250 million bond with an amazing interest rate, which is going to fund the new James Brown Arena. Next, we've already received about $1.5 million for our Emergency Operations Center. This was specifically spearheaded through our congressionally directed spending. Hats off to Senators Ossoff and Warnock for their assistance in this regard. And then last but not least, Augusta was selected as a hub city. While there are many accomplishments that the city of Augusta has partaken in this particular year, as well as FY 23, those can be found in the back of your book. So if you take a few moments to look in your book, you'll see all of the accomplishments from each of the departments. If you haven't had a chance to take part in some of Augusta's robust art throughout town, it is beautiful. We have new crosswalks that have been painted at our murals in East Augusta. We have storm drains that have been painted throughout the area. We most recently did the pillars of the golden blocks right here at Twig Circle. And then the Augusta sculpture. And if you haven't been down and saw the 5th Street Bridge, there's art that lines the 5th Street Bridge. So our art partners have done a great job in keeping Augusta looking and feeling like the art community that has already been expressed throughout what the citizens have said that they wanted to see more of. Our legislative session brought us some great gems that we are proud of. The first commission, if you recall, when we set priorities for our legislative session, was to increase our per diem for state prisoners. That was approved. You most recently in your last commission session accepted those dollars. Warden is pleased to receive the additional $2 per inmate for his facilities. We've also received $7.3 million in LMIG funding. Director Malik is already working hard on how those dollars will affect Augusta. All of those dollars will not be allocated to Augusta. This is in the governor's budget, so Augusta will be able to receive a portion of those funds. And then $3.4 million for emergency medical services. This mostly benefits Central EMS, but at the same time, a benefit to Central should hopefully equate to a benefit for Augusta, because we will not have to pay as much of their indigent care that we currently do. Next, we're going to have our budget and finance presentations from Ms. Donna Williams. Please keep in mind that this year, I want this budget retreat to be more engaging. Please ask questions. Please stop us. Please make certain that you understand exactly what it is that we're talking about, because now is the time to dig in. The finance presentation followed by our HR presentation will have a lot of information that we want to make certain that you understand what we are proposing, and we want to understand what you would like to see going forward. Ms. Williams?
I'm too good with this thing behind me, so. Okay, some of this is going to look familiar to you because we just recently went through the end of our year 2023 reports. I presented that information to the commission, and then I brought you up to speed on the first quarter for this year. So once again, in 2023, we did have some good news. We had funds that had surpluses. Our general fund had a surplus of $6.3 million, fire protection 1.4, water and sewer were almost 8, waste management 3.3, and the airport, due to ARP and the timing of their grants funding, was almost $16 million. Now, most of that already is obligated. Those are runway expansions and various capital projects out for the airport. That is not free money, so to speak, for operational endeavors. And then our stormwater utilities finished with almost a $700,000 surplus. The American Rescue Plan, out of the $84 million that Augusta received as a consolidated government, as you may be aware, because we've talked about this numerous times, Augusta, as a consolidated government, under the terms of the ARP, qualified both as a city and a county. So as other consolidated governments across the United States, we were eligible to receive funding under both those sections, which we did claim, obviously. The total was approximately $84 million. As of the last commission meeting, there are $632,000 worth of funds that remain unallocated at the present time. Our digest is projected to grow again for the 6th consecutive year. What we do expect this year is that there will be a more modest growth, that between both the increases due to reassessment and what we call true growth to the digest, that it will be more in the moderate range of somewhere between 3 and 4%, as opposed to the very large jump that we saw last year. Most of that was, again, due to reassessments, and that triggers a whole other group of conversations that have to happen around millage rate time. Now, Ms. Williams, concerning ARP, those funds have to be obligated by December 31st, correct?
That is correct. According to the rules of accepting ARP funds, that remaining $600,000+ needs to be allocated to a project, a named item, prior to December the 31st of this year, which probably won't be a problem. There are always plenty of projects that need funding, and this is essentially a source of a $632,000 worth of a project.
But keep in mind, commissioners, that this is a one-time funding source. So if you allocate it to something that you would like to see carried on year after year, those funds
would not be available. So keep that in mind. Their best use is for one-time projects.
Right, right. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, so as we move on into 2024, as you know, in December of each year, we adopt the budget for the following year. So you just adopted the budget calendar just recently, and as a part of that calendar, one of the very first actions that we have called for a workshop, which is the reason that we are here today. We will continue moving on through the process as the departments compile their budget needs and send them in to us in the form of the Sears Roebuck Christmas catalog type version. And then we start to pare those down. You start to allocate the resources that Augusta is projected to have to the projects that we need and want to get done. So our government-wide budget in 2024 was $1.16 billion. Now, that's a huge number, especially for us. We loved it when we moved from the 990-something million dollars to where we could put the little B at the end. But please keep in mind that a lot of that is not discretionary spending. A lot of that pertains to your SPLOST funds. Right now, we are in a transitional time as we are really moving through the last part of phase 8, kind of the middle to the last when things are really kind of hyped up. So you have a lot of things that have been started and carried over. So those budgets follow them in addition to the new monies that are allocated each year under those capital projects. So through the first quarter of 2024, our revenues and expenditures were well within our expected parameters. When we talk to you about the first quarter each year, we kind of go, because in the first 3 months of the year, you're kind of just getting cranked up. Your revenues are coming in, but they're coming in slow, as I've told you, and I'll tell you again probably on another slide. Our revenues, especially from taxes, are weighted towards the end of the year. So we make projections about what ad valorem taxes will come in. We make projections about all of our revenue. And during the year, we monitor those to see how well our projections are matching up to actual and see how well our plan is going. Have a little sign at home that someone gave me a long time ago that kind of sums it up. It says, life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. To me, that's kind of definition of the budget, is you make the plan using the best information that you have at the time about what you want to accomplish, and then you monitor how that plan is matching up to your real life. You know, day to day things happen that you may have planned to go out of town this weekend, but you know, you may have, your hot water heater may have broken that morning when you got up and you had a flood on the floor. So life happens while you're busy making other plans. As a part of the 2024 budget process, the Commission put in place a 1% reduction to departmental budgets, which was effectively set aside for those life events that happen after you've made the budget. In the general fund, that 1% reduction totaled $1.8 million. So there have been a couple of actions that have happened, and to date, $354,000 of that 1.8 has been reabsorbed into the budget with the designated items that the Commission approved. you've been to my budget presentations before, you've seen a bunch of my little pie charts, and so we put those back together so that it kind of gives you just a good visual. I can quote numbers to you, and I can put tables and columns up there all day long, but when you see the pie chart with the colors, sometimes that kind of brings it home a little bit further. So this is our total $1.16 billion budget. It's a little hard to see when you start putting it up, you know, that far away from you. So if you, maybe your notebook might help you a little bit. But the big blue portion of that is the general fund, which is almost $200 million. And then the capital projects fund is the other big part of the pie over there that's another $200 million. Capital projects includes what I was talking about before, your SPLOST funds. That is a big portion of Augusta's budget. That doesn't mean that you can go out and use those for recurring items. As Ms. Dowse pointed out a while ago, the capital projects are for large, one-time expenditures.
And there is a capital project section in your binder, the last section in the binder. You've seen the capital projects plan, but there are some updates to it, which also includes some pictures that the department directors most recently submitted. Some of those range from a few $100,000 to millions of dollars that we're gonna have to make certain that we plan for in FY25.
Right, and I believe that that section has a 5-year time frame on there, and just those amounts by themselves are approximately $300 million. So there's your SPLOST package right there. You can just approve it today if you'd like to. Yeah, I heard some grumbling from over that way.
Right.
So here is your general fund revenue by type. Now, the big blue part of the pie that's almost 75%, those come from taxes. Now, when you say that and your citizens say, yeah, my taxes are way too high, the biggest chunk of those taxes, I'll go to you on the next slide, they're not always your property taxes. Our big chunk of taxes comes from sales tax. Ad valorem taxes still brings in, at the current rate, is projected to bring in approximately $62 million. That's correct. But your sales tax is, do I have a, you have one. Here's your sales tax, it's approximately $44 million. Until we saw the big growth in the digest several years ago, and the digest started climbing at a little bit higher rate, those two numbers were actually a lot closer together. I can remember a good ways back because I've been here a long time. I can remember when the sales tax was actually higher than the property taxes. And that is not because of increases to millage rates. It's basically because of the change in the digest. Augusta is growing. So we benefit from that by collecting more revenue. But the flip side of that, as your digest grows, your citizens and you're required to provide a higher level of services and more services to more people. So, you know, it's a good problem to have. It's a good problem, but nonetheless, sometimes it does present some challenges to us. So, flipping over to the expenditure side. Our general government, which is basically where your administrative portion is approximately $40 million. If you look at the pie chart of just about any governmental entity's general fund, you will see a chart that does not look significantly different than this. The biggest part of the pie chart is here, which is public safety. Approximately $83 million out of our $200 million budget goes to public safety. That is not an anomaly for a governmental organization. Most governments are very heavily weighted towards public safety. You will see consistently, if you go out the door and talk to 5 people on the street, that's one of the top 3 things they're gonna say that the government should do for them, is to make them safe.
Which is also consistent with our budget surveys from the citizens who completed it. That has been the case for the past 3 years, more money in public safety, or at least like she just stated, the top 3.
Right, if you want to, when we put out these budget surveys and what the citizens want, sometimes just for kicks and giggles, we'll sit down amongst ourselves in finance and go, well, these are gonna be the top 4. Well, nobody ever picks anything besides public safety to be the top 1. That's what's coming in. But depending on what's going on in the community and what the mood of the citizens combined with the challenges of the economy are, the rest of them sometimes shift around. So, but public safety is pretty consistently number 1. Not surprisingly, this chart looks pretty much the same when you go look at other governments too. How does a government provide the services to its citizens? Well, they do so by this very top category. They do it by people, having people to provide those services. So you're going to see personnel and the related expenditures to personnel. You're going to see that as your top category just about on every single governmental entity that you look at. It's another very interesting slide. Okay, so when you get to these expenditures, where do those expenditures occur? We just showed you what category they're in, but who directs those categories? Who is in charge of providing those services? Well, in our particular government, the biggest portion of that pie, over half, $107 million, are directly controlled by elected officials. You set the budget for those elected officials, but the governing body does not control their day-to-day operations. But just over half of the general fund belongs to departments, is allocated to departments that are run by elected officials. The next about $73 million, those are direct reports, such as myself and the folks over here on both sides of the room, that report directly through the administrator to the commission. You have boards and agencies, and then you have a couple of your external organizations that make up the rest. How did we make that plan that got us for 2024, and how are we measuring up so that we can look at what we did good and what we hopefully didn't miss too badly going into 25? What we did correctly is we projected an increase into sales tax. I've reported that those, despite inflationary challenges, which is one of the thumbs down, our sales tax has remained steady and has increased. In fact, it is currently exceeding our projections, which, if you're sitting in my chair and sitting in your chairs, that's a good thing, because that means that revenue is coming in ahead in that category of where we projected. So you don't go out and spend it all at one time, because that life thing is going to get in the way on the expenditure side at some point. I'm not a pessimist. I'm just kind of been here long enough that I kind of know something at some point is kind of going to go sideways. So you need to have things that you can dedicate to mitigate what's going to happen to you. The other thing that we have projected consistently is that the digest is going to go up some. Mr. Roundtree communicated last week that the assessment notices are either just about ready to go out or have just gone out. Just gone out. So you'll be getting some calls from those folks that are reading their property tax evaluation and either are very happy with it or not very happy with it. So it's going to go a couple of ways. That's the way the normal process works. They will work through those down to the level of appeals that is accepted by the state, and then they will forward the value of that digest so that we can begin the millage process to bring in the revenue that's associated with this year's budget. We're also earning interest at a higher rate. You remember maybe 2 years ago, we were really just celebrating if we got a whole 1% interest on funds that were being invested. The upside to inflation is that interest rates go up. So we are in a fortunate position that we have funds in the bank which are earning interest. Thumbs down. Inflation's slowing down, but it's continuing to affect the cost of the goods and supplies that Augusta purchases in order to do our jobs and to provide that level of services. Ms. Rooker will touch on this, and you guys are familiar with it. We're currently in a pretty tight labor market. We've got a lot of vacancies. I have trouble trying to figure out sometimes why we have so many vacancies. If there are so many folks out there that you see that say they, that want to go to work and cannot find a job, and we've got jobs out there that we are offering to folks, but we continue to struggle to fill those vacancies. There are an awful lot of factors involved. And I wouldn't pretend to be the expert in that. I just can look at it from our financial perspective that we budgeted for them and they're out there. And the reason we budgeted for them is we need these positions to be able to provide the services. So if you can't fill them and you don't have people in there to do the job, you're going to get behind on those work orders that are coming in because nobody is out there asking for less work to be done by Augusta. The other thing that we talked about briefly is that our electricity franchise fees came in less than we budgeted for them from Georgia Power. We are, as a member of Georgia Municipal Association and ACCG, they provide some services where they will go out and do what they call compliance reviews of your franchise fees that are submitted. The last one they did, I think, was in 2020 or 2021, but they are currently engaged with us and are starting a compliance review, starting with Georgia Power. Once they do Georgia Power, they'll move on to Jefferson, but Georgia Power is by far and away the lion's share of the funds that come in to Augusta from electric franchise fees. Nobody's saying anybody did anything wrong. We just want a review of those and see if we can have some additional information that will help us with our future budget projections. This is a chart you'll always look forward to seeing. This is our sales tax collections from 2022 to 2024. And as you can see, for the months that we have collected through April on this chart, that's the purple bar is 2024. The purple bars are larger than the blue bars, which is last year, which are larger than the red bars, which are the year before. If you want to see a projection, this is what you want it to look like, where every year for your revenues, it's continuing to increase. This is what a growing Augusta looks like, translated into a bar chart for sales taxes. Last 8. Total amount that's set to be collected, Augusta as a consolidated government, which also issues debt out of these sales tax collections. We have the opportunity under Georgia sales tax laws to set a dollar amount as a target rather than a time frame amount. Why is that important? That means that we are guaranteed to collect the amount of money that we authorize in the sales tax resolution. Some of the municipalities that do not qualify for this, they're required to set a timeline. So if they set, let's just say $100 million, or they have projects that they budgeted for about $100 million, and they think that it is going to take 4 years to collect that, then their referendum would say that their sales tax authorization is good for 4 years. If during that time the economy slows down, thanks, and it comes in at, during that 4-year period, only comes in at $90 million, well, they've got a $10 million decision to make. They've either got to scale back by $10 million, or they've got to fund those projects from somewhere else. Augusta has, ever since we have been able to utilize the target dollar amount to keep us out of that predicament. So our SPLOST 8 package, $250 million worth of projects. We're currently averaging $4.9 million per month in collections. And while we had originally projected an end date of June the 30th, 2028, we're going to get there early. We're going to get there 18 months early. Our projected date for end of collections is now the end of the year 2026, which is the reason that we're going ahead and starting our conversation about what we want to see in SPLOST 9. Our digest, I'll just touch on this kind of briefly, that our projected growth rate is going to be in the more moderate range of 3 to 4% this year. Depending on the weighting of reassessments to growth, the state of Georgia requires a rollback calculation for the reassessment portion of the digest change. That will trigger the conversations that will happen just in front of the millage rate recommendation, which should be towards the end of July, first part of August for you guys. This is the first quarter of 24 as compared to 23. This is on the expenditure. This is on the revenue side, over here. Your various types of revenue, how they did on the budget as compared to what actually happened. As you can see, we budgeted a total of $177 million now of revenue. We're through the end of March, we were just under 35. The percent is the number you're kind of looking at. If you're looking at the first quarter, you're looking at about 25% of, that would be a quarter of the year, 25%. So our revenues are at about 19, and I'll go into a little more detail about that in just a few minutes. So in the first quarter, we concentrate looking at the expenditure side. Those are usually a little more constant. They're unaffected by the big portion that is your taxes that come up at the end of the year for your revenue. Your expenditure side, with a few little bumps, it's kind of a little bit better of a flat line where your revenue kind of goes pew at the end of the, towards the end of the year due to your timing of your tax collections. So, if we stopped the world at the end of March, we would have been almost $5 million in the hole. Okay. Susan's back there typing. She's heard me say this before. First quarter, that's normal. That is normal. We're looking at our expenditures. Our expenditures are well within our 25% target. Our revenues are chugging along. As I reported to you when I did the presentation to the Finance Committee, there was nothing that looked out of the ordinary other than the slight decrease in the franchise fees. But we had, at that point, had 9 months to make adjustments, to watch the rest of the revenue, and to make sure that we know how our plan is doing. Switch gear here just a second. We talked briefly about the American Rescue Plan. We started 2024 with about unallocated balance of $448,000. Okay. We did a couple of things that took effect in the 25 budget that were adopted in November. 24 budget, thank you. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. That caused some changes. We did a little bit, we ended the supplement that was in the general fund that was passed, the commonly referred to as the $15 per hour living wage, interchangeable type descriptions. We absorbed that expenditure a year early. We did that to increase the amount of unallocated funds for ARP. Then we turned around and we also did a switch with the FTEs in the call center for 311. That $425,000 was allocated to the demolition program to give it some more oomph to address an issue that repeatedly comes up as an area of concern for the commission. Allocated $500,000 to the Jimmy Dias Parkway street lighting project. $350,000 once again to the look and feel and quality of what our city looks like by allocating that $350,000 to the right-of-way maintenance program. And then most recently, $10,500 to flock cameras that are to be located out at Goshen per request from the Sheriff's Department. That leaves us with the $632,000 unallocated balance that we've mentioned previously. Okay, so what are our challenges? Well, the next 14 slides will itemize those for you and hopefully kind of bring that back. But I think, oh, tough crowd. I don't even get a smile from anybody. Jeez. Yeah, you're cheating. You're reading ahead of me. Okay, so we need a decision. We need a consensus. We put out the budget priorities from the citizens. We get those from those that participated. Everybody has their own ideas about what's important. We have to come to an agreement on those ideas. We have to take all that information and we have to focus it. If you're going to get anywhere, You have to focus your efforts towards what you're trying to do. You can't. It's more difficult to do a broad array of untargeted efforts than it is to focus and agree upon where this government needs to go and what kind of monies we're going to spend where to get it done. That's the budget process in a nutshell. Doesn't mean you're locked in forever and ever and ever and ever. Just means that we come to an agreement over how these funds that we have are going to be allocated. It doesn't work anymore. Bullet point number 3 is it would be so easy to get everything done if we didn't have a finite amount of resources to get it done, right? If we had all the money in the world, it'd be real easy to get everything done just exactly like everybody wants it done right then. But we don't. We have a finite amount of resources to allocate towards what can sometimes seem to be an infinite amount of requests. That's a challenge. But that's what the budget process is for, is figuring out where you want to devote those resources that we have. While you're doing that, that last bullet point down there is also pretty important. We built up reserves. We continue to build our reserves. Why do we build our reserves? Because when that life thing happens, or that ice storm thing happens, you're able to take care of business and take care of your citizens. I still have PTSD about the ice storm. Hamid's got it for a completely different reason. Mine was related to our financial well-being and our recovery process from FEMA. Immediately, we spent approximately $19 million removing debris, making our citizens safe. Over the next 6.5 years, we worked with FEMA to get our claims processed, to get our portion of that money back. We had to use our reserves. We built them back. They were there. That's what they're there for. So we used them, and then we replaced them, and we built it back up, and we continue to build it. Okay, where could we possibly get some more revenue? Okay. Our hotel motel tax, and this is a conversation that we will need to devote a ton more time to. Georgia allows up to 8% hotel motel tax collection. Augusta is at 6%. The use of those funds is restricted. They are, depending on the ordinance that is used to adopt your hotel motel tax, that allows your expenditures, that authorizes your expenditures. There is a potential for Augusta to go from 6 to 8%. In numbers, at the current rate of collection, that additional 2% would be about $2.5 million more revenue that could be dedicated to qualifying uses under those ordinances. So that's an entire conversation to, yes, sir, to itself.
Okay, where is our hotel tax money going right now? Where is it going to?
50% of it goes to the Coliseum Authority and 50% of it goes to the CVB. A third of the amount that goes to the CVB is a part of that re-granting process that we have an agreement with them to fund the various arts and tourist-related organizations.
Okay, what other things can we use it for?
Big conversation, but short answer is tourism-related.
We can't take any monies and use it for construction of buildings or operations or what have you.
Yes and no.
Okay.
You can build, if your use of that hotel motel tax money is to build a building that will bring in tourism, then it could be a qualifying use. Like I said, it's very restrictive, and you've kind of got to define and work through the process. And then once you adopt it, and there's a whole process that attorneys have to get you through, the adoption process. But once you adopt that ordinance, it lays out everything that those funds can be used for.
Okay, and I'm just running through my head. The waterfront could possibly be something that we use for tourism, correct?
Would seem to be a qualifying use, yes, sir.
So if we were to go up 2%, you said it brings in 2 million, 3 million, possibly 4 or 5 million.
No, you're
I'm
kind of
reaching-
inflating my
I'm
numbers
reaching-
just a little
I'm
bit.
reaching. But if it brings in another 2 million, we could possibly use that to help fund activities to shore up our waterfront possibility.
I'm not gonna go with the activities portion, because that sounds a lot more operationally, kind of leaning in that direction.
The building.
Let me use something I'm comfortable with.
Okay.
You got tennis centers that bring in tournaments, that bring in people to Augusta. You have Diamond Lakes that brings in sporting events. Those type facilities the funds could be used to augment, enhance those facilities for the purpose of bringing in tourism.
And because 50% of those dollars goes to Destination Augusta, we will make certain to include them at the table in having these discussions. But communities similarly situated to Augusta are already at 8%. Atlanta's at 8%, Athens is at 8%, Savannah is at 8%. So it's only right for Augusta to consider this as an option for an increase in revenue.
And I agree, I'm just saying, we need to use it for something that we really need. I think shoring up our waterfront, whether it's building or something or what have you, I think very much worthwhile.
And keep in mind, this is for people using our hotels. It's rare that residents have to use our hotels and motels. So this is for individuals that's already coming into the area. I mean, for those of you that have traveled lately, you've probably paid in excess of 6% for your hotel motel tax. And so 6% for Augusta is really low. I was just in Boston and it was exorbitant. So other situatedly positioned cities where we travel, an 8% increase would be common, especially if you're accustomed to traveling.
Right, but that, as I said, the use of those funds is highly regulated by the state of Georgia, and that would be an entire workshop in and to itself to make sure that we were headed in the direction that we wanted to head, and that the outcome would be what we want it to be. But as Ms. Dowse pointed out, we like to talk about sales tax, that your actual percentage of what is paid by folks coming through as opposed to your citizens. You've got other people helping fund your government that are just, passing through. Well, that's 50-50 or so. Hotel motel tax is almost 100% folks that are just coming through. Those folks coming through and paying the hotel motel tax would be funding the improvements that are then in turn bringing in more tourism, which would bring in another group of folks that would continue that funding stream, and so it just keeps going.
And I said Athens, I meant Albany, so excuse me. Commissioner Pulliam, did you have a question?
I'm gonna hold it. Thank you.
All right. Somebody stop Sharon from running out of the room right now. We're gonna just throw it out there that our transit fees generate a drop in the bucket towards the cost of the service. We have not had an increase since 2009.
And it's currently how much? $1.25 to ride our bus.
Okay.
All right.
So, we talk about this all the time. I do. I maybe just to hear myself talk. But the recommended fee adjustment methodology is small incremental adjustments so that you're not waking up in the hole 14 years later going, man, we really should have adjusted that fee.
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
And I imagine she's back there. How many riders do we have per year?
Ms. Daughtery, how many riders?
How many riders do we have?
Currently, we're at 525,000 rides.
500 and how many?
25,000.
Riders, not riders.
So, you do the quick math on that, that's about $1 million worth of fees.
She said rider. People that ride the bus.
We don't have 525,000. We might
That's-
have 525,000 riders, but we don't have 525,000. The question really is it worth it? And I guess it is it worth to take it up, given that we may or may not have enough riders to support what it is we're trying to do?
Well,
Conversation.
transit is one of those social services that's not designed to support itself, unfortunately. I mean, the cost of a bus is now, how much, Ms. Daughtery?
531,000.
So the cost of a bus versus $1.25 per ride, the costs significantly outweigh what it costs to actually operate. Hence the reason why they're heavily supported by federal funding as well as local funding, which is currently how Augusta is supported as well as many other municipalities. And so the fares are low simply because the least of thee cannot afford transportation or a means back and forth, especially during the times in which public transportation is offered. We've already done studies in which we are looking at expanding the service either further south or even on Sundays. Most people work on Sundays, but what about those individuals that utilize public transportation but don't have transportation on Sunday? But 2009 is a extremely long period of time since Augusta has seen an increase, and $1.25 is extremely low. One other challenge it poses is that quarter. It then forces change. That's 3/4 that has to go back if somebody's paying by $2. Ms. Daughtery has been fussing about change. So at least if we bring it up to $2, it makes those transactions a lot easier.
And I don't have a problem with that. My thing is, when we have a service that digs into our quote-unquote budget, then it becomes a real serious problem.
Okay.
Quick question, slash, what's the offset amount between what we receive in federal funding versus what we are bringing in?
what we're paying out for
Right.
the city.
The transit system is supported by a transfer from general fund of almost $5 million.
From the general fund.
Yes, sir.
It was
General fund and urban services, yeah.
the offset amount, so between what we're receiving in federal allocations for transit versus what we are actually bringing in with our $1.25 per ride.
If I could just throw this in to help out what Ms. Dow said, the federal funds do not pay for operations. The federal funds will help buy a bus, but they will not provide the cost of the drivers for the bus, the cost of fuel for the bus. It is capital purchases only from the federal funds.
Aren't we getting money from TIA for transportation?
With round two, yes, sir, that did increase,
$2 or $3 million?
let me look up. Per year? Okay.
2.3 million, I think you're already getting 500,000, 600,000.
It was, yeah, in the first phase of TIA, it was a much smaller number. I want to say it was 350 or so, but I'd have to go, yeah.
750 per year.
Okay.
No, it's 2.3 million every year. It's 23 million for 10 years.
Thank you.
2.3 million for 10 years?
23 million for 10 years, which is
TIA is for 10 years.
Okay.
So that was adopted in the plan. But this conversation, kind of like the hotel motel, it's got a lot of areas that will need to be discussed and examined before. I mean, I'm not standing up here recommending a transit fee increase of X amount of dollars. Just citing where additional funds could possibly be identified.
But I have no problem with increasing the value.
Okay.
Well, and keep in mind, if we move forward in this direction, it's gonna involve public comment, citizen meetings. So I will, after this budget retreat, I will take all of these recommendations, present them to the commission and a motion, which will hopefully then get the ball rolling on some of these actions. But a lot of this stuff, for it to even take effect or be considered in our budget for FY '25, it's gonna take a lot of the groundwork this summer to get us there.
And just a big comment, you're gonna have a lot of people, especially riders, that are gonna want the increase.
That's an absolute.
Yeah, but, I'm probably a little different from some of the commissioners. I believe that we should do what's best for Augusta. And what's gonna be the best for moving forward. We've got some people, they don't care whether or not Augusta is solid when it comes to finances, or what have you, just want what they want.
The next item under here is always the millage rate, up, down, sideways, roll back, not roll back. Won't know and will not be able to make a recommendation to you until the digest is approved and we see what the possibilities would be. Like I said, we've made some assumptions in this budget and we'll see how those bear out and hopefully make an informed recommendation to the governing body before you can set the millage rate. Well, if you can't increase your revenue, you got to balance. You got your revenue and your expenditures, and they're like this. So if you need to change the mix and the revenue can't go up, then the expenditures have to go down. Well, where do you go looking for what I've termed here a cost shifting mechanism. Once again, something that we have not done since 2017. Where's Anita? Help me, 17? So we have not adjusted our health care premiums that our employees are paying. What happens there? Well, the employees' portion is locked in. If our cost goes up, Augusta picks up the difference. High, low, and with who else do you know that works anywhere that has not seen an increase to the cost of their health care in the past 7 years? I can't
Especially with
think of a
healthcare
one.
costs rising.
Industry standards say that healthcare costs sometimes increase as much as about 30% a year. Augusta has managed to hold down that cost for the employee. Doesn't mean our healthcare cost has not gone up. It simply means that we have passed along none of that increase to employees. Now, I'm an employee. I realize I'm standing up here probably recommending a change to my health insurance premium. I'll get back to the office and I'll have, a bunch of calls as soon as this goes out. Anita will be inundated. You guys may hear from that as well. I'm saying that it's a potential. We have not made any adjustments in the past 7 years. Okay, that's a short term. There can be recommendations put together. We've got our health insurance consultants are looking at that to be able to help us make some recommendations as to what that would mean in the term of dollars and cents, both to Augusta and to the employees. Long term.
And before you go on, Ms. Williams, concerning the health insurance, nobody wants the employee, no employee wants the employee portion to increase. Yet at the same time, there once was a common split of about 75 to 25, or was it 80-20?
It was 80-20.
It was once a common split of 80-20. And so as those costs rose, they would do so incrementally for both the employee and the employer. Well, over the years, as we know, because salaries have been such a challenge, administration was always conscious of that and not wanting to overburden the employee with the rising costs. Well, hopefully costs have started to, meaning salaries have started to kind of get to a point to where that burden can be shifted some. That's exactly what the finance department and the human resources department has been tasked with, seeing where that allowable stretch will be. But if we continue along this road and the employee never has to brunt the cost, especially with healthcare costs rising, the split will continue, the ratio will continue to be more out of balance to where it will be even harder for us to catch up.
But at the same time, I don't think there has to be a balance, because when employees' salary goes up and then there's an increase of insurance premiums, then it's almost to the point to say, well, what I just got an increase on is just went out the window.
Can I do that one?
No,
Can I do that one?
let me
Can I do that one?
So what I'm saying is, let me finish, and I understand when you talk about the 80-20. So we just have to be careful that if we give Johnny a $1 increase on his salary, we can't make it 80 cents going towards his health benefits. So all that Johnny's seeing is 20 cents on that dollar. So, there has to be a balance. So you can proceed.
Absolutely. And you're exactly right. That is something that we are conscious of and paying close attention to, and playing with these numbers to see what that percentage of ratio would be. a 3% increase to a salary, which we just did a cost of living adjustment, that's great. An increase in your health insurance would be dollars, maybe $10 or $12 or so on and so forth, but and so it won't be equated to from a percentage because different people have different plans for their insurance. So it's never going to be something across the board, but a 3% increase for someone's salary is completely different to how your health insurance would be allocated. So even when it's communicated, we won't communicate it in percentages because it gives a misperception that they're equal,
Yes,
and they're not equal.
yes, I agree, totally agree.
Attorney Brown?
I think, we know prices don't stay the same and the city can't absorb every cost. However, I think what I am uncomfortable about this conversation, you're talking about something in an isolated manner, as if healthcare is the whole universe and healthcare costs is going up and now employees get COLAs. The COLAs are not just for healthcare. One, our COLAs are low. 3% is better than nothing, but it was not great. It does not reflect the cost of living increase across the United States. It's lower than what Social Security gave. So those are not great COLAs. And we missed so many years where we got no COLAs. And when we got these little simple $500 one time that did not even add to your salary, so it didn't even repeat. So the employees are already behind, and when everything else go up, when groceries go up 8%, and you give a 3% COLA, I think maybe the city should look other places other than employee to help cover some of these healthcare costs. Employees work, their salaries are not necessarily considered high-end, at least not most employees or a lot of employees. So I think we can think about other ways to cut expenditures, look at some of the money we put into contracts that are extremely high, and we give less attention to when there's a $100,000 contract come across the dais. There's less conversation about that than it is when when the department needs a $35,000 car. I'm just saying we need to look at it holistically. The employees are not getting away with murder. I think we should have extreme caution asking employees for anything else. That should not be the first place. The problem is employees do not get asked in a public way, what do you think? How are we doing? Employees have no place to come to the commission. It's safe, they have to call the commission individually. On the floor, there's no lobbyist, there's no spokesperson for the employees, and so they don't get heard. So when something gets imposed, they have no way to communicate to the commission as a whole what this is doing to them. Someone needs to look out for the employees, in my opinion.
Okay. Now, keep in mind, for everyone's sake, this is potential revenue sources.
There's
Potential revenue sources.
There's no hard recommendation being made today. It is simply exploring options, and unfortunately, healthcare has a high dollar number associated with it. So we are just conducting our due diligence by exploring to see what, if any, changes should be made. The same thing with the next item on here, and it is on here simply because it has been put forth already on the commission floor, is to explore changing our current pension plan to increase the vesting from 5 to 10 years. Now, that is not something that can be done with a knee-jerk reaction, nor done in one single commission meeting. There's a whole process that would be involved. The first thing that would need to be done, we've already, there would need to be an actuarial study done. GMA is the current administrator of our pension plan that most of the employees are under. So we would need to have some conversations with them. What would that mean? Well, there's no, there probably would be very little immediate short term, because your pension plan and the cost associated with it are spread out over the life of the plan, and the life of the plan is the life of all employees that are in that plan. So when you start estimating what the cost of changes to your pension plan is, it's spread out over time. And the actuarial study would be what the methodology that would be used to tell you what the cost up or down might be based on the assumptions that they have for our particular plan. Like I said, it's on there because it has been discussed already on the floor. '24 and '25 budget concerns. Probably looks like a familiar listing here. Facility maintenance and upkeep. We've got some challenges. Augusta is an old city. Augusta has a lot of our facilities that were built some time ago. They're showing their age just a little bit. They've got some challenges because we have deferred maintenance, kind of like your car. You can put off that oil change, but if you put it off too long, it's going to leave you in the middle of the road. It's going to make the decision for you. So a few of our facilities apparently have all gotten together and they've made the decision that, hey, y'all need to do something with us because we're hurting. So as a body, we need a plan for maintaining, upgrading, and taking care of the facilities that our citizens use. Streetlights. That's going to be on my tombstone. Streetlights. I'm just going to leave it right there for right now. Streetlights. We've got to figure out what we want to do and how we're going to pay for it. So another whole, we could spend, a couple hours talking on that. But for now, I'll just move on. Solid waste collection. Yep.
Before you move on, Dr. Malik, while this is an open procurement, I don't want you to get into the details of it, but approximately when will you bring a recommendation to the commission, and what is this bid out for? Come a little bit closer forward. And the reason why I wanted him to bring this up is because a portion of streetlights, if you go to your ARP section in your book, a portion of your streetlight deficit adjustment is in ARP. And keep in mind, those funds are dwindling rather quickly. So finding a solution to our streetlight problem is going to be more necessary now than it has ever been.
So that RFQ was generated and submitted to the procurement at the direction of the commission. That process is near completion. We were in a fee negotiation, and there are several parts to that. So one is to do the assessment of the city-owned lights, which is around 6,000, in what condition they are, what it's going to take to upgrade and all that. Then the second part will be for the selected vendor to buy out the city-owned property and also upgrade. Like Georgia Power already have several thousand lights on that. And then they will provide the fee structure or the cost structure, what it's going to cost them to upgrade. And they will upgrade and maintain, but then the city has to pay over a certain designated period for them to recapture their investment. So, the goal is, hopefully the next agenda item, we will bring the recommendation to award that RFQ to a selected vendor to do the phase one of that process, which is the assessment of the city-owned lights and how much it's gonna cost. That's where we are. It took us longer to negotiate the fee, but we were able to bring it significantly down. It started from $1 million and we got almost 20–30% down. There we are.
All right, thank you. You might not go far. Because the next bullet point on here is your solid waste collection and recycling program. So, already had some preliminary discussions, but that's another item that does need to be addressed. As you know, your trash pickup fees, as well as the street lights, appear on your property tax bill. That is the method by which Augusta collects it. It's very efficient. But at the same time, it puts a timing constraint on decisions that have to be made if there are changes to either they have to be done in time to go out on the tax bills when the tax commissioner sends those out in October.
And if you recall, you just approved the Zone 1, the Zone 1 solid waste collection matter on an agenda a couple of weeks ago. So Dr. Malik's team will be working on putting out the bid for Zone 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
So yes, Doc, come on back up.
Yes, the city is rebidding all three zones this year with the effective date January 1st, 2025. At that time, the new rates will be presented to the commission based on what the bids come and all that. But that will go into effect probably 2026, right? Because that rate's going to be in 2025, so it's not going to be this year. So still, we have to absorb the 2025 cost. All zones 1, 2, 3 gonna be ending now on December 31st, 2024. The RFP is in the procurement, and the goal is to get it out this month, another week or two. And then, as the commission decided to bring a recommendation back somewhere in October, so there's enough time to decide which option to go.
Yeah. Hence why it's listed as a concern, because as he just stated, we're gonna have to absorb any increases for FY '25, so that will be worked into the budget.
Next concern that we have pertains to our fire protection funding stream. Fire protection historically had a large portion of their capital needs included in the SPOST package. When SPOST 8 was adopted, there was no funding for fire equipment. Fire engines aren't cheap. $1 million a pop, pretty good estimate. Just nod.
So we have aerial apparatus and we have fire engines. Fire engine right now is in excess of $900,000 for one, and aerial apparatus is about $1.85 million for one. So basically $1 million for an engine, $2 million for a ladder truck. That's what we are. There's no car lots with them sitting out there. We have to custom build them, go through the process. And the prices are not going down, they're only going up. And we have a lead time of a minimum 24 months up till about 48 months. So if we don't get out ahead of it, then we're gonna forever be behind.
Thank you.
And if you look in your book, under the capital projects tab, the fire department for FY 2025 has almost $7 million in needs. They have almost $5 million in needs for FY '24 that were not fully funded. So that just means that their FY '24 needs that were not fully funded will roll over to FY '25 needs, further compounding their need. Unfortunately, that's the case for a lot of our departments, but I know because we're specifically talking about the funding stream for the fire department right now, I wanted to point that out. I'm certain when we get into our breakout sessions, the department directors will not be shy in pointing out what some of their needs are individually.
Thank you. So, and kind of to drive that home, SPLOST 8 is going to go out through the end of 2026. So there is no immediate relief in sight for their capital needs from the existing SPLOST package. So, but we can do hopefully a better job and make some more informed decisions going forward with the package for 9. Capital needs, as we've talked about back and forth, and it's in your book, there's a total of about $270-something million worth that's listed in your book for requests from 24 to 28. It's a 5-year, kind of a 5-year look. If you want to highlight some of those, the fire was 30 million, central services 20, IT 11, 12, environmental services 24, parks and recreation, no big surprise, $43 million. These are the facilities that are existing that need overhauls. They need some love. They need to be taken care of. So once you build it, in the days when federal funding was a lot more plentiful than it is now, we built a good many of the facilities that we have now. We built May Park, we built Warren Road, and we built Fleming all at the same time with federal funds. That's one-time expenditures. Once those are built, there's no more federal funding for staffing and maintenance. So all of those facilities that were built in the late 70s, early 80s, now need to be upgraded, maintained, and taken care of. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to what? Okay. Ms. Rookard will come back to you and talk to you about our human capital, which, as I said before, that is the way that we provide the citizens the services that they want. We have to have people to do it. So thank y'all for listening.
Yeah, I can add one question.
Okay.
In reference to George Powell, we were talking about getting a review done on how we list them off on the projected revenue. What percentage, what percentage will we, if we see a deficit in our projection? What was the percentage on the, of the Georgia Powell?
I give you a dollar amount. Okay. Commissioner Lewis asked, what percentage did we miss our projection for our franchise fees for Georgia Power? It was we had budgeted approximately $16 million. We came in $1 million short. We had projected at the same growth, approximately the same growth rate, but a little bit lower that we had been seeing because it had been building over the years. And, you know, my power bill at home hadn't gone down. I don't know about y'all's, but I'm not using any less power. So in the discussions that we had internally and looking at industry data, we felt comfortable in those. it didn't pan out. So now and we don't have an adversarial relationship, please don't get me wrong, with Georgia Power at all. We just don't have our finger on the pulse of where and how their revenue is coming in. That's proprietary information to them. They give us our revenue in March of each year based on their sales for the calendar year previously. Yes, sir.
First quarter, the end of the first
Yes, sir.
quarter of the preceding year.
Mhm.
So in this review, so you've already initiated a
Yes, sir.
process and how you're gonna go about that?
Yes, sir. GMA is currently, they're currently working on that.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
we are almost there. If everyone could start to migrate back to your seats. Let me go round up the commissioners that I do know are still here.
Well, is it the same truck or is the trash in there or did they go empty and come back? Could be the same truck. Yeah,
I think I would, and they probably would tell me. I would think somebody told me, think about.
Go ahead and take your seats. The next portion of our presentations will be from Human Resources. Again, this is interactive, so ask questions. At 11:30, we are planning for lunch from 11:30 to 12:30. After lunch, we are planning for your breakout sessions. You should be pretty familiar with this process. We've done this the last couple of years, in which department directors, you are already broken down into groups, and you will rotate, as you know, I like to say speed dating style, with the commissioners. So go ahead and start pondering on what some of your hot button topics will be. But from now, here we will have Ms. Anita Rookert, our very own Human Resources Director. Ms. Rookert.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good morning.
Okay, how about my peers? Good afternoon, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Thank you, guys. Let's wake up. I want to stay on the human capital section of our program this morning because that's what we do in HR. It's all about the people. And I'm going to stand on my soapbox for a minute. It doesn't matter how many street lights we need to put in or how much sewer work we need to do. It takes people to do those jobs. And so that is the number one most important thing that HR does for Augusta. It's keep the people engaged, keep our community looking attractive to bring more people to Augusta. So one of the things that we're going to celebrate today is the fact that we look pretty good. When we look at retention, look at where we started in 2020. And 2020 was the year of COVID. And 21 was the year of COVID. And 22 was the year of COVID. About mid-time 23, we started coming out of COVID and started moving up and having an upswing. And so, as you can see, our numbers have gone up. We are now looking at about 86% of retaining our employees, whereas we started at 93. And of course, we always want to be 90% retained. We're not there yet, but we're moving in the right direction. And that,
Excuse me, if you recall, in 2022, we did a 3% retention increase. In 2023, we did a 3% retention increase. And then in 2024, we were just able to do a 3% cost of living adjustment. So hopefully those have started to effectuate what our retention rates have improved to.
and the other thing that I'd add to that is better programs, more programs. We implemented our We Care in 23. Today, we are about 50% of our employees are using our We Care program, and that's our child care. That's a plus, because this was a program we didn't have. And so it took us about 2 years to spread the word, and our employees are using it. So we're excited about that. And what that tells us is, what that tells me is the more great programs we bring to our employees, that's not just about money, the more we stand a chance of keeping them. Because it's not just the money that attracts people to Augusta. We have great benefits in Augusta. We did a lot of training and conversations last year with our employees on our benefits. It doesn't matter if you have a great platform of benefits if I don't know how to use them. So we took the time to focus on how do you use your benefits? How does it benefit me as a single mom? How does it benefit me as a family? How does it benefit me as a single person? And so we went through those programs with our employees to bring on better understanding for our benefits. So all of those things help bring us to this 86%, and we're looking pretty good, which means at the end of this year, we're going to be up in our retention numbers. I'm sticking with retention because I want to make sure we can talk about the things that really affect our employees. So HR is focused in '24 on retention and recruitment. Our recruitment needs are different in every department. So how we recruit has to be different for every department. The needs of finance are completely different than the needs of planning and development. I have to recruit in different spaces for those. Something that Ms. Williams brought up earlier, she talked about a tight market. Yes, we do have a tight market, but that means for us is I can't recruit for every position out of Augusta. That means I have to spread my arm and make a reach further from Texas to Virginia, California. We have to recruit in those areas to bring people to Augusta, in specifically public safety. So we can't sit here and think that people will come. We have to go get them. And every department has a different look. So we have to build our recruitment plan based on the department, not based on the people, based on the department. Because as I said before, what finance needs looks completely different than what they need in utilities. And when I talk about utilities and engineering, I'm looking for engineers. So I don't need to go to a liberal arts school. I should be going to engineering schools to talk to those kids about coming to Augusta. So recruitment is a big issue for us. Recruitment is going to be even bigger for us in the next 2 years because we've got to go and get the people and bring them to Augusta. We have to create programs and travel to bring the people to Augusta and advertise in ways that will attract people in California to look at Augusta. Augusta is a great place to live. We have beautiful parks. We have tons of things going for us, but people don't know that. And so my office is charged this year with being creative with how we recruit and where we recruit to help with some of these hard to fill positions. And at the same time, do programs, have programs and initiatives to retain our current employees. I've already talked to Ms. Dowse about different programs that I'm interested in bringing to Augusta to help support and retain our employees. But we have to start small, and the areas that we can be effective this year is I'm focusing on our child care. Why? Because we have over 35% of our employees are single parents. And I would dare to say about 45% of that are single moms. And where do they work? In our public safety sector. And so we've got to do things to help that group. And in helping them, it helps others. I know even in my utilities and engineering department, I have a lot of single dads who have to leave at 3 o'clock. We know where they're going at 3 o'clock. Childcare. So in helping them navigate that helps these departments keep their people on the clock until 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or in times of emergencies. So although our numbers look fabulous, I'm gonna push the envelope again. We are doing well. Our numbers are going up when it comes to retaining our employees. And yes, getting the COLA did help. Yes, having the childcare, that also helped. being able to show our employees just what their benefits look like, that also helped. So those were contributing factors for this year. Any questions so far? We are going to go up again on providing more programs for our employees, educating our employees about everything, retirement. 2 years ago, we had retirement trainings for our employees just to get them thinking about retirement and understanding what their retirement looked like. We're going to do that again this year because we have a lot of baby boomers that are thinking about retiring. And so I want to make sure that when they leave, they have that education regarding their retirement. So those things matter when it comes to our employees. Those are the things that they actually look at. Our engagement numbers are up. For the programs that we've offered this year and last year, our mental health awareness program, the numbers went up. Our employee appreciation, the fact that we were able to pay for them to go to the Augusta Green Jackets baseball game for employee appreciation. My first year, I think we had maybe 400 employees participate. Last year, we were looking at 900 employees that came to that event. That's awesome. And they had a ball. That was awesome. So I only buy, maybe at that time, I bought 500 tickets. And it was such a great need, I ended up buying 400 more, and they all were used. The programs that we're offering our employees are better. We're educating them. We spend more time educating them on what we have available to them, and always looking for ways to improve. I work with every department on their recruiting needs, on everything from marketing a particular position for the salary, marketing a particular position for even, I don't know, planning and development. I've been working with them closely this year to bring more people engaged into that area of planning and development. Although it's not requiring a specific degree, it does require certifications, and so we have to look for those people who are currently in those areas. And so that's where we will spend our time this year. Yes, our numbers are good and our numbers are going up, but that's where we will focus the next 2 years. Recruitment and retention. Because I want to keep the people that we currently have, because that's where all of our knowledge is. And if you spend any time in the chambers at the first of the month when we talk about celebrating our employees with that institutional knowledge, 25 years, 40 years, 50 years, you see a lot of them are retiring. So we need to spend some time with them and get those people, the people underneath them, trained up to move into those roles. So next month, I think Ms. Dowse has me presenting a succession planning. That's a conversation we should be having. And training. All of us should be in training because the world around us is changing constantly. Our workforce is changing. Our workforce does not look the same anymore. And what they're looking for in a job isn't the same thing anymore. They're looking for quality of life things. They're looking for work-life balance. Whereas we're talking about benefits, and we're talking about, I don't know, having better benefits and paying more money. The young people today are not interested in the money. They're looking for work-life balance. So it requires us to change how we see them so that we can attract this new workforce and bring them to Augusta. Ms. Dowse, are you done with me?
We have compensation, the compensation study.
Okay. I have 2 more items. I do want to let you all know that probably May of this year, I want to say it happened May of this year, the federal government sent out a notice changing our federal fair labor standards changed as of May of this year. And so I definitely need to make you all aware of that. There are 2 dates to keep in mind. The first one is July 1, and then we're still pulling data to see how this would affect us. It doesn't affect us a whole lot come July 1, but come January 1st, we're looking at the numbers now to see how the Fair Labor Standards have changed and what that will do for Augusta. But I did want you to be aware that the standards have changed. And we're on top of it, we're in front of it. And as we continue to do our studies regarding what effects it'll have on us in January, we will definitely make sure that the administrator's office is aware of it.
And this will greatly affect department directors and how you accurately account for your staff overtime. And I will be presenting a memo next week to the commission that will go back to, we've gotten away from it, but the commission has already made a motion and approved for all staff below, is it SES or department director level?
Department director level.
All staff below a department director level must clock in and out. This is going to be extremely important for us to project how much overtime your staff is actually accumulating between now and the end of the year. Because this new FLSA change that's going into effect in January is where we're going to see the largest impact.
Right.
We're not concerned as much about what's going to impact Augusta for July 1, which is in a couple of weeks, but January 1 is where the largest impact will be. So department directors, this will be a change in behavior for a lot of your staff, especially those that you're accustomed to that have a set schedule in ADP. But we need to accurately know how much overtime this will affect. And so generally, it's going to be a bigger deal for staff that makes, let's round figure, less than $60,000 a year. Yes, ma'am.
What about those persons now that are not entitled to overtime pay?
So
are we going to start having to pay your exempt persons?
no,
Are they affected by this?
No, they're not.
No, they're not. But because of the commission action years ago, everyone below a department director level should be clocking in and out. Should be clocking in and out. It is most important for those individuals that make less than $60,000 a year.
So, one more question.
Mhm.
So what's the purpose then of having that person in mid-level management to clock in and out if there's no compensation, just for us to see the time that they spend working?
Specifically for those that make less than $60,000 a year, Fair Labor Standards is going to now require come January that they will be paid overtime. So there will be a shift in who is eligible for overtime versus who's eligible today. And so we need to be able to accurately estimate how much this will affect us from an overtime standpoint. But because your staff is not clocking in and out right now, we don't know how much overtime to estimate. So please assist us with that because we're not going to broadcast this. This is not going to be something that we're going to say, hey, we need to know what your overtime is looking like because this is going to affect us in January. But as of now, I don't know if the procurement department averages 20 hours of overtime or 200 hours of overtime because your staff does not clock in and out. And I'm not saying you, but just Department A, okay?
So would this just affect you 60,000, I'm sorry, Ms. Director.
So the budget is going to handle those few people that are caught into that transitioning process.
That's the plan. But it'll be difficult for the budget to handle it if we can't go ahead and project what those estimated figures will look like. Hence the reason why we need your help as department directors to, if you just blanket say everybody start clocking in and out, then that'll cover it. But
We need the data. Right now, we don't have any data to tell us who does what, when they're, because everyone under the director isn't clocking in. We have lots of them that are not clocking in. And so we actually need the data. That's gonna help us put the numbers together for Ms. Dowse for January and create the additional data we're gonna need come January to see how many people this will actually affect.
So how you guys are gonna go about doing that? What processes you have in place for each department? Say for instance, a big department like utilities, where you have all of
they're
these
spread
work.
out.
Yes, and they're spread out, you know, remote. How is Wes going to determine how he's gonna be set up, that each employee clocked in?
So we will have a expanded conversation with them directly, because each department is set up differently. But most departments have a home base. Let's take planning and development, for example. They come to one location, then they go out in the field, and then they come back to that location. Very rarely do people leave home, go to work, and go back home, never interact with a home base. And so finance and HR will be having those expanded conversations to see what are your needs. It will most likely include information technology as well. But at this point, it's difficult for us to say, we know who it's going to affect. We know how many people it's going to affect. FLSA is not a secret. If anybody wants to research it, it's already out there. What we're not going to do is broadcast it to our staff right now because we're still loose on the data. But what we need the department directors to do specifically for those that make less than $60,000 is to assist us with getting the data.
I just, my question was just how you were gonna do it in terms of your setup for the various departments like that.
And Ms. Williams has something to add, and then Wes, I'll come to you, Mr. Bond.
We currently already have approximately 70-something time clocks that are scattered throughout the organization, strategically placed in meeting places, particularly where there are large groups of employees that are reporting to work prior to going out. Plus, there is the ability for any employee to clock in from their desktop that is connected to the network. But say like if Wes's construction crew at RCCI, there are time clocks that are located there, just like in the municipal building. When you come in by the elevators, you can walk by and swipe the time clock. So we've been on a timekeeping system for a number of years. So we already have most of the technology in place that would enable us to be able for employees to clock in and out where they need to.
So my next question is this: I have a badge, a city badge. So will my badge be used? Not me per se. I'm talking about the employees. Not me, but the employees that have ID badges. So will those badges be working in conjunction with the timing system? You say they have them in various places.
Sir, there are two badges. There is an employee badge and there is an ADP timekeeping badge. That ADP timekeeping badge is the one that and it can be used, like if I'm normally at the municipal building and I swipe in and out, but I have to go to the recreation department administration office that morning, I can swipe in and out there and the system tracks where that swipe came from.
It's tracking the person.
The person.
Yes.
Mr. Bond?
So just my quick question is it trade specific with the Fair Labor Standards, or is it just salary level specific?
It's salary.
And so if I've got personnel that are, okay, so that's all it depends on is that. So at that time, they will be paid overtime, they're going forward?
So in January, so there's in.
Don't tell them.
Well, I mean, I got to at this point. So there's two salary markers The first salary marker, July 1, is
43 and
43.
$43,000 and some change.
which isn't a big jump.
Not
Where
many
it
of our employees will be affected. So it's my recommendation, and Commission, you'll see this formally, to just do nothing at this point. Let those individuals accumulate, because they will now be eligible for overtime. Not a big deal, not a problem. We've already looked at who the list of those are. Majority of them are in the court system. I've already spoken with the solicitor as well as state court judges. Their staff rarely works overtime. Not a big deal. The bulk of the change will be for employees. The next jump will be $58,000 and some change. So for any employee that makes $58,000 and some change, that's why I gave you around $60,000 or less, they will now be eligible for overtime. So this could be a major benefit to some of your staff, because now we're starting to get into some mid-level managers here that might work more than 40 hours a week. Keep in mind, Augusta currently, our average time is 37 and a half. But for those, overtime does not start at 38, it starts at 40. But the key here is we do not have accurate data on how much overtime to expect because your staff does not currently clock in today. So we need them to start clocking in so we can keep track of what an average looks like. Warden, this is gonna hit a lot of your staff as well. The same with engineering and utilities. I mean, it's gonna hit everybody once you start talking about $60,000, and these are people that's not accustomed to clocking in and out. Another option that we're gonna be weighing is how much of that would it benefit us to increase salaries above the $60,000 mark to avoid paying the overtime. But if you have majority of the people below $60,000 that's not working overtime, do nothing. But we don't have the data, so we need your support in encouraging, actually in requiring your staff to clock in and out. So Commission, you will see more of that on the floor. But keep in mind, there's already Commission action out there that is to require all staff below the department director to clock in. We just have not been enforcing it. Any other questions? Because y'all department directors, y'all will see more of that in the coming months.
Did you have another question? Are you good?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm just coming in for backup if y'all needed it.
Okay, the next thing that I want to touch on with you all is our comp study. Yes, our compensation study is currently still going on, but we are in a very good place. First, let me thank all of the directors who have talked to, listened to my HR department, Siegel, gotten the documents in, turned in documents on time, took your documents and had to have them redone, org charts and all. So thank you all for getting us there. Where we are now is they're actually putting together our development philosophy for our compensation. They're out in the market getting our assessment based on our positions. So they're doing the market analysis based on our positions. So it's easy to call engineers, that's easy to look at. Not engineering, engineers. So they're looking at the market, at all of the engineers. They're looking at the market, at procurement. So that's what they're doing now that they have all the data. So they're going through that. And they will be making a recommendation probably in the next 3 months. We'll get a recommendation from them, a development plan that we'll be able to put into place. Yes, I'm hoping that the leadership gets to look at it and review it before we even present it to commission. I don't want any surprises, but I want you to see some of the recommendations that they're making to us and see where you are able to be flexible or not. But this is something we will be able to discuss, and then I'll give it to Ms. Dowse to go to commission with it. And yes, they will still come to Augusta and present to our commission their findings and why they're making the recommendation. So we're in a good place, as long as nothing comes up to slow us down, but we received all the data from all of our departments. Keep in mind, we sent out a little over 900 job description questionnaires to our employees across the board. We got back a little over 840 something. So that's great data for us to use. We got back all of the job descriptions. We've made changes to some job descriptions, and so they have a good foundation now to come back with some analytical information and salary numbers for us to use. Was it a long process? It was. We are a large organization, so I want to make sure that every stone is turned. So it is a long process, but I believe we'll be able to use this data moving forward for everything. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
You're fine.
I've gone through now 3 compensation studies. And the first 2 that were reviewed, the city didn't handle them quite accurately and fair, or the appearance of fairness. And what happened was, the compensation studies came back to the city of Augusta, like it should be, and commissioners had to make a decision. And they did that. But the problem was, the same body made decisions based on departments and not on the overall study, which further presented a gap between salaries. And of course, we're always concerned about having certain group on board, so the concentration was that. Are we going to do this fairly this time? Number 1 is my question. Number 2 is, has the city actually, or will the city actually look at the study and budget for it according to the recommendations? Because the last 2 studies, it was, well, the city don't have enough money to implement it. Well, if the city doesn't have enough money to implement it, don't implement any of it, as opposed to picking and choosing. Because what happens then, commissioners, is that our staff feel like you don't care about them, those who was not considered in the salary increase portion. And unfortunately, the last 2 studies, the same departments received the increases. Because what we see, and I see it as being the need for those 2 departments to have an increase in salary. I see it and I understand it. Well, we can't continuously give that group of people increases when other people feel that their jobs are just as important.
I understand that. I can only answer one question. I will answer the first question.
Okay.
And your first question was, are we going to be fair? Now, I can tell you about the process. The process that HR handled this time around was different than how it was handled the last 2 times. HR was involved. We were involved from the beginning, and we'll be there until the bitter end. That's gonna make the difference, because my team, we speak up for everybody. And so that is the difference. It's not a one size or a one side. HR is at the table having the necessary conversations to make sure that when we do it this time, it's going to be effective for everybody. Now, the decision as to how they do it isn't up to HR. That's something we're going to take back to the commission. And I can assure you that my office, finance, and the administrator's office will be fighting for everybody, because that's how we got here. If that makes sense. We got here because things got upside down. I'm trying to right side them up. And the only way to do that is to touch everybody, is to make sure we are aligned across the board. From job descriptions, that makes a difference, from org charts. All of those things play a role in making sure that our compensation study is effective for everybody. Budgetary-wise, that is on the commission.
Well, and I will say, a lot of the financial need, the department directors have absorbed a vast majority of it, so thank you. Most of you have already looked within your current budgets, you've abolished positions, you reclassified positions, and you've given increases to staff. That has happened to most of the departments across the board. So some of that has already been absorbed. So thank you for that. But the full-blown need, what the total amount will cost, we don't have that number yet. But we've already put dollars aside, even in the FY24 budget, to assist with some of that. And then hopefully there will be funding in FY25 to assist with some of that as well. But right now, again, we're lacking the data. So just like y'all want the compensation study completed, so do I, so we can see what the number is. So I'm constantly pushing for the number, especially before we start getting heavy in budget conversations, to make certain that when the plan is presented to the commission, it will be one that's realistic, that we could fund fully.
See that worry? I'm not being challenged.
No, I gotta give myself an out. So I mean, I'm being recorded, it's live stream, I gotta make certain I'm using some loose language here. So no, I'm not promising anything, but I'm definitely saying that it is our goal. I mean, hey, most of us in the room were here for the last 2 compensation studies. So we remember, we know what happened. But doing something is better than nothing, but at this point, we're not saying what even that something is.
And my office is working with Ms. Dowse to make sure, like last year, when she sat down to have a real budget conversation, she was able to get a number from us to help her put aside. And so our intention is to do the same thing, so that she can have a real conversation with the commission and say, wait, this is what we can do, or this is what we can't do, or this is what we have available, and move from there. So we are doing the work to make sure that the conversation is a legitimate, fair, open conversation at the table with the commissioners. So I think that, having some data is gonna help us, and they're preparing those things for us. And so I'll have some numbers for her by the end of July.
Okay, may I respectfully ask the commissioners, what is your thought?
I think, Director Sam, I think after compiling the information from the compensation study, and once it's forwarded, I guess your concern is that the commissioners will make the final decision. So your concern is not geared toward human resources or administrator. It's more towards the commission who will be making that decision. And rightfully so, that your concern should be directed toward us. But there will come recommendations, but the overall decision will be made by the commission. And I hear your plea, I hear your cry, but it would be something that the body will make. And it's my hope and prayer that when it's presented, that everyone will come to a reasonable conclusion that will best fit. Not just individual departments, will be unique across the board. I would hope that that's how we would look at it once it's presented to us. But I hear your cry. I hear your cry.
Commissioner, I look forward to that.
Absolutely.
All right, time for lunch. Any other questions? No? Commissioner, will you please bless the food?
Absolutely. Let us pray. God our Father, we thank you so much for all that you do. We thank you for all that you are, God. So again, we ask you if you would bless this food that has been prepared for the nourishment of our bodies. We ask that you bless the hands that have prepared it. And then, God, as we partake in this food, God, we pray that we'll be reminded of those that are less fortunate than we are, and that not only will this food bless us to be a blessing to you, but that it might bless us that we may be of service to others. These prayers we ask in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Lunch is served back in the lobby.